Hey guys, so I'm gonna do a quick review and a book-to-movie comparison of Everything is Illuminated by Jonathon Safran Foer. I am sorry that this is a little bit later than I said it was going to be. I really wanted to do the book-to-movie comparison of it, and I haven't gotten a chance to watch the movie until last night, and I hope you don't mind my slightly dressed up appearance. I just had a job interview, literally just got back from it. Wanted to film this real quick before the sun goes away. If you don't know yet, if you haven't heard me say it yet in any of my other videos, I'm a photographer and I do retouching stuff and some video stuff, and I've been trying to get more into like design stuff too, and like all of that's what I went to school for. And like right out of college last year, pretty much right out of college, I got a full-time job doing what I really wanted to do, which is retouching, and it was great, but I got laid off from it after 3 months, and it was like the most devastating thing ever. And that happened in September, and ever since then I've been looking for another full-time job, and that's pretty much what I went to this interview for. I think it went pretty good. I was told that I did pretty good. I was told that I did the things that they wanted me to do better than the other people that they had interviewed had done, and that they want to kind of put me on a trial basis, like a trial freelance basis for a little while, and make it full-time. Hopefully down the line everything goes well, so wish me luck with that, I guess. And I haven't changed yet, because I know the second that I do, I'm going to want to like change into something more comfortable, and I'm probably just going to fall right asleep. So I haven't gotten much sleep at all lately. Only slept like 2 hours last night. Kind of feel like I need a nap, so I'm going to get this done and out of the way so I can edit it later and upload it. And yeah, that's enough rambling for now. So Everything Illuminated by Jonathon Safran Foer. I really like this book a lot. I've added it to like my favorites on Goodreads, because I definitely can say this is one of my favorite books now. I really love this book a lot. It was really great. 5 out of 5 stars. It's basically about this Jewish guy. He's kind of like a fictionalized version of the author. His name is also Jonathon Safran Foer. The main character's name is Jonathon Safran Foer, and he's basically collecting and using what he's collecting to write about his family's history. And he has this photograph of his grandfather with this lady, and his grandfather is from Ukraine and his family's from Ukraine, so he basically wants to find this lady in this photograph because he believes that this is the lady that saved his grandfather's life, that helped him kind of escape Ukraine when the Nazis took over in World War II. I mean, him being Jewish, he had to flee somehow, and Jonathon, the main character Jonathon, believes that this lady in this photograph helped his grandfather leave, and he really wants to find this lady. Her name is Augustine. At least that's what he thinks her name is. There's a name written on the back, Augustine, and that's who he believes that this lady is. And so he travels to Ukraine to hopefully see if this lady is still alive, hopefully to find her, to find the town that his grandfather lived in, and to just like say thank you to her and just talk to her and kind of get her story and maybe learn a bit more about his grandfather. So he goes to the Ukraine, and when he gets there, he meets his translator named Alex, and I'm going to talk a little bit about him in a minute. He meets Alex, his translator, and Alex's grandfather, who is going to be their driver, and I'll talk about both of them in a minute because they both need to be talked about separately. And they also have a dog named Sammy Davis Jr., and they all kind of travel around Ukraine looking for this town that this photograph is taken in, this town that Jonathon's grandfather is from, and looking for this woman in this photograph. And that's basically what the idea of the whole book is, that Jonathon goes to Ukraine, meets his translator and his translator's grandfather, and they all go on this journey looking for this woman in this picture. But it's told in a very interesting and very unique way. It's told in like 3 different types of ways. Like there are 3 storytelling techniques that kind of cycle in the book. So the first one is basically Alex's point of view from the time that he finds out that he's going to have to lead around this Jewish guy and translate for him, to like meeting Jonathon and, you know, helping him find the lady in the photograph and everything. Now, Alex is such an interesting character. He is so great. This very first part, like the very first storytelling method, is from Alex's point of view. It's Alex writing down his like experience with Jonathon trying to find this photograph, and it begins right before he meets Jonathon, right when he finds out that he has to be a translator for Jonathon. But this writing that Alex is doing he is writing it after all of this has taken place, so he's kind of writing it after the fact. He's writing it kind of looking back on what happened and kind of examining it and talking about what he thought and everything as everything was happening when it happened in the past, because it's already happened already. So he is writing this version of his side of the story, and he's writing it in a really funny way. His English is like really awful, and it's hilarious. Like most of the time, he doesn't even mean to be funny, but he is the most ridiculously funny character ever. Like he's so like crude and shallow and just ridiculous most of the time. Mostly just talking about money and sex and clubs and famous people and wanting to go to America and having all these big, huge ideas about what America is and everything. And it's really great. His point of view is so awesome. It's so well done in its badness. Like the way that Jonathon Safran Foer has written Alex's part is just, it's so awfully written that it's hilarious and it's great, and I love it. So Alex is telling his side of the story, like right before he meets Jonathan, to when he meets Jonathan, to when he goes on this little journey to find this person, this photograph with Jonathan. So he's writing that, and then the second storytelling method is kind of Alex's letters to Jonathan. So it's again from Alex's point of view, but it's direct communication from Alex to Jonathan. It's kind of implied that they're sending letters back and forth, trying to create this story together, because Jonathan is kind of writing this book about his family and the past things that have happened with his family that are leading up to like now in his life. So Jonathan wants to have Alex write his side of the story so Jonathan can kind of use it in his book. So Alex sends the parts that he's written from his point of view to Jonathan, along with these letters that kind of talk a little bit about what he's just written, and also talk about some of the, later on it kind of talks about some of the corrections that Jonathan has supposedly wanted Alex to make. Like we get to read what Alex wants to write. Like he writes just anything he wants to, just writes it all out, and then he sends it to Jonathan, and then it's implied that Jonathan sends letters back and kind of gives him corrections. We don't actually get to see any of Jonathan's letters back to Alex or any of his corrections to what Alex has written. Alex just kind of implies that Jonathan has made some of these really like funny corrections that kind of make Jonathan look kind of less pathetic in Alex's point of view of the story. And it's really funny sometimes because Alex is just like, I think it's better like this. I'm gonna leave it like that. I'm sorry, Jonathan, but I'm just gonna leave it like that because it's accurate. It's what happened. So Alex is writing these letters to Jonathan, and like I said, it's implied that Jonathan is writing letters back, and along with Jonathan's letters that he's sending back to Alex, he's also sending Alex these bits and pieces of a story that he is writing about his family's past, about Jonathan's family's past, going back to his, like, hold on, I can't find it. It was just like, I wanted to get the amount of greats right, but I can't find it. So it's like his great grandmother or something, and it starts like way back there in his family's history, and he's basically writing about all of the relationships that his like great grandparents have had down to like now, and it's really great. I really like those parts of the story. They're really interesting. They're really unique. Everybody that is written in Jonathan's little writings about his like ancestry, they're all like really off as people. Like a lot of things that happened to them are just really weirdly off, like kind of quirky but also kind of screwed up. There's a lot of really strange relationships going on between his like ancestors, and I mean it kind of makes this book what is called like magical realism or hyperrealism, I think is what it's called, where it's stuff that it takes place in real life, but it's got a certain really off, really strange quality to it that's kind of hard to explain. It has some sort of like not supernatural elements to it, but it's just a little off. That's the best way I can describe it. And it's such a well-written like piece. It's like all those little pieces that Jonathan writes are so nice. They're all written in a really nice way, and the relationships, while some of them are really screwy, they're also like, you have a lot of empathy for them. Like there would be, some of the characters will be like abusive or like adulterous, and yet you'll still feel this weird sympathy and empathy for their characters and for the relationships they have with people because of the way that Jonathan tells them. And there's these really great parts of the story that really kind of have almost nothing to do with the little adventure that Jonathan and Alex have been going on. It's just kind of like a backstory to tell us why Jonathan is doing this. And it kind of, to me, the way I understand it is that Jonathan is kind of putting together a history of how his existence, how his own existence has come to be. Like, for example, if that lady in the photograph, as Jonathan thinks anyway, if that lady in the photograph hadn't saved his grandfather, then he wouldn't be alive. And so I think this, what interests Jonathan the most about writing this is the events in his ancestors' lives that have led up to him existing. At least that's what I take away from it, and I find that really interesting, because it may not have a really direct correlation with what the main story is, but it really adds something really nice to the main story. It really adds something nice to Jonathan's character. It really adds something nice to the place where this takes place, the town where this takes place, Trenchenbrod, which is in the Ukraine. I think it's a fictional town, I'm not completely sure. I'm pretty sure it's fictional. But you get this really great sense of what that town is like, and what the events that happened in it are, and who Jonathan's ancestors as people were, and what their relationships were like. And it's really great, and I really like those parts a lot. So those 3 different storytelling methods kind of cycle. One will be Alex will write his little point of view, and then Alex will write a letter to Jonathan, and then we'll get Jonathan's like little story about his ancestors, and then it'll go back to Alex's point of view. And like I said, it's kind of implied that Jonathan is sending these parts of his like ancestor story to Alex, and Alex kind of comments on what Jonathan has written, and he finds it to be really beautiful but also really, really sad, and he kind of has a lot of comments to make on that. And you see this really, really nice, really clear, really in-depth, really natural progression in Alex's personality. Especially Alex kind of steals the show in this book. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's told from his point of view. We really don't get Jonathan's point of view at all, even though he's like the main character. So what we get is really Alex's perspective on everything, and Alex's perspective is so nice because we get a really good look into his life. He has a father that's kind of abusive, that's really abusive. He has this little brother that he cares about like more than anything in the world, and it's such like a really nice relationship between him and his brother that he has, because pretty much everything that he does, everything he wants like twice as much for his brother, who's named Little Igor. He really wants the best for his little brother, and it's a really nice relationship to see. And Alex has a really nice relationship with his grandfather too. His grandfather is a really interesting character because he's like really dismissive a lot of the time. Like, we get a little bit of a background on his personality, a little bit of background on what he's done at one point, and Alex doesn't really understand his grandfather all that much, but he really respects him a lot. And there's these great conversations that happen back and forth between like Alex and his grandfather and Jonathan. Like, Jonathan will be speaking English, and his grandfather and Alex's grandfather will be speaking like in Ukrainian or Russian or something, and Alex will be like in between the two, kind of like translating back and forth, and Alex will be like talking to his grandfather, and his grandfather will say something really offensive and then translate it really nicely back to Jonathan. And it's really funny. There's a lot of really funny moments, and it's a really great way to tell the story, to have this character that kind of can speak 2 languages and goes back and forth between his story with Jonathan and his story with his own family. And Alex just has this such a great depth and like change in character, not necessarily change, but like this really great progression as a character. It's so natural, and it flows so well throughout the entirety of the book. I mean, every character really has that, really. I mean, Jonathan, you even see him, he has a sort of progression in his interactions with Alex. Like, even as we see Jonathan through Alex's perspective, we can kind of tell that Jonathan is learning a lot from Alex, and Alex is learning a lot from Jonathan. And their relationship together is really nice. And just all of the relationships in the book are just really well developed, and they all have this really nice arc of what happens within them, like throughout the entirety of the book. That's really nice to see, and is surprising to see in such a short book with so many different things going on in it. And overall, I really like the writing in it. It's just, it's definitely a really great book, and I would recommend it to really anyone, because it's just a great story with a lot of really, really great characters. Okay, and now I'll talk a little bit about the movie and how it compares to the book. Thinking about the movie as an adaptation, which I do first and foremost, I didn't really like the movie as an adaptation of the book. The book just has so much more. The movie loses so much in it. It loses pretty much everything that Jonathan writes about his ancestry. It loses almost everything, when they could have done something really interesting with that, because in the photograph, they used Elijah Wood as Jonathan, and he did a surprisingly good job. Like, I was really surprised at how much I liked Elijah Wood as Jonathan. And in the photograph, Jonathan's grandfather is just Elijah Wood, just made to look a little bit differently. But it would have been really interesting to see at least that backstory of his like grandfather, at least, because we get a lot of his grandfather's backstory in this book in Jonathan's writing, and we could have seen Elijah Wood maybe play his grandfather and Jonathan, because they're so different. The characters are so different from each other, and it would have been a really great thing to see, I think. But they didn't really do any of that. They really just focused on the main story, which is like Jonathan coming to Ukraine, meeting Alex and Alex's grandfather, and going off in search for the lady in this photograph. And it's very, very straightforward. Not as good. It's not as interesting in any way, which is a little disappointing. But then thinking about it objectively and honestly, it would have been really difficult to translate a lot of the stuff into a movie, like, and to fit everything that happens into a movie the way it is in the book, and I understand that completely. And thinking about it as, like, if I had seen this movie without reading the book, I probably would have loved this movie, like, a lot, because it's really beautifully shot. I mean, all of the cinematography was done by this guy named Matthew Libatique, who has done all of the cinematography for Darren Aronofsky, who done Pi, Requiem for a Dream, The Fountain, and Black Swan, and he's done some other good things too. And his cinematography is really nice. It just looks really nice. The editing is really nice. And I really like I said, Elijah Wood as Jonathan. I liked him a lot more than I thought I would. I thought I wouldn't like him at all, but I definitely did like him as Jonathan. He played it really well. And the kid that played Alex was great also. He was a great Alex. My only problem with that is I feel like they could have done a lot more with Alex. Alex didn't have the progression in the movie that he did in the book, and Alex's and Jonathan's relationship, like, doesn't come through at all in the movie. Not at all, really. Like, you never get a sense of who they are together like as you do in the book. Their relationship builds in a really nice way in the book, and they kind of learn from each other in a really nice way in the book, and that just doesn't happen in the movie at all. And I feel like it could have. I feel like it really could have. I feel like the kid that played Alex really could have shown the, like, emotional depth, because there are bits and pieces in the movie where we see Alex show some of that emotional depth that he has in the book, but it doesn't come through as well as it does in the book. And I really think that guy who played Alex could have done that if the writing, the script would have let him. Also, the guy that played the grandfather just didn't have the humanity that the grandfather in the book had. He most of the time, I mean, towards the end he kind of got better, but most of the movie, the grandfather character kind of felt like just this humorous prop who was just there to be a bit of over-exaggerated comic relief, who didn't really add too much to the story. Like, I mean, he is a big part of the story, and it does happen that he is a big part of the story in the movie, but he just doesn't come through in the right way in the movie. He seems more like a humorous anecdote than a really well thought out character. I mean, overall, I would give the book 5 stars, and I would give the movie maybe 3 stars, considering it as an adaptation of the book, and maybe probably 4 stars as a movie, just a standalone movie, because I probably would have liked the movie if I hadn't read the book. Like, it's just the right amount of quirky and humorous and, like, really beautifully shot that I tend to like in a lot of movies. So, I mean, obviously, I think you should read the book. Definitely read the book before the movie, because they're very, very, very different, and the book is way better. It's a way better representation of what the story is trying to say. Anyway, I think that's all I really have to say, and I'm gonna go now. I am going to be bringing you a book to movie comparison and a book review of Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, also by Jonathon Safran Foer. I have a lot to say about that book. I have not watched the movie yet. I'm probably going to do that tonight, but I have a lot to say about that book. Mostly bad stuff, but some good stuff. I'm very conflicted, very, very conflicted, but you'll have to look out for that sometime soon, either tomorrow or Wednesday, one of those days. I have plenty more stuff coming, so I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching.